ॐ नमो नारायणाय ॐ नमो नारायणाय
Asmadgurubhyo namaha, Asmadparamagurubhyo namaha, Asmadsarvagurubhyo namaha. So today we're going to look at a book called Trikala Sandhya Vandanam by Satyamurti Iyengar. Yajurvedya Kalatraya Sandhya Vandanam. Introduction. Sandhya hino asuchir nityam anarhas sarvakarmasu yad anyat kurute karma natasya halabak bhavet. Okay, so this sloka is actually in Hari Bhakti Vilas as well. This says, you notice the asuchir means unfit or unclean or contaminated. He who does not perform Sandhya Vandana, which is the essential ritual of all Brahmins, who are all twice born, not just Brahmins, but Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, is ever impure and is thus rendered unfit to perform any of the Vedic rites, or the Nitya daily and the Naimitika occasional duties enjoined by the scriptures. If, however, he did perform these duties once in a way, right, even though he's not doing Sandhya Vandanam, in spite of the self-inflicted impurity due to the non-performance of Sandhya Vandanam regularly, this said performance will not yield any result, and therefore it will be a mere exercise in futility. So we find that this is a basic qualification for people who want to chant Vedic mantras, who want to perform Vedic rituals that use Vedic mantras, is that they need to perform Sandhya Vandanam daily 3 times a day. So what is Sandhya Vandanam? Against this background, it should be clear that Sandhya Vandanam is the gateway to the domain of Vedic rites, and that one acquires the eligibility to perform the Vedic rites only through the performance of Sandhya Vandanam. As a matter of fact, all our Purvacharyas, or ancient preceptors and teachers, noted for their profound knowledge of the scriptural texts and exemplary code of conduct, have held that Sandhya Vandanam has to be performed at the appropriate timings as Bhagavad-agyaya Kainkarya. Bhagavad-agyaya means on the order of the Lord. Kainkarya. Kainkarya means service, the service of the Lord, which is what he orders in the scriptures. So that is as a matter of service rendered to God, Bhagwan, by way of obeying his command, which leaves obviously no option to the participant to skip it, as it would be tantamount to disobeying his command, inviting his wrath and displeasure. Well, commands are meant to be obeyed. In Vishnu Dharma 631, Lord Vishnu writes as follows: Shruti Shmriti Mamaivagnya Yasyamulangya Vartate Agyanachedi Mamdrohi Madbhakto Api Navaishnavaha. The Vedas, the Shrutis, and the treatises thereunder, the Smritis, convey my commands. Whoever violates them goes against whoever violates them, that is, goes against the scriptural dictates, commits treason. Even if he be my devotee, he is by no means a Vaishnava. So Lord Krishna has pronounced clearly in his celestial song, the Bhagavad Gita 16:23, as follows: He who casts aside my commands in the form of the Vedas and the ancillary texts and treads the path dictated by his own sweet will and pleasure does not attain success or happiness in this world, and there is, therefore, no question of his attaining the highest goal on the yonder side. In other words, Sri Vaikuntham, or the supreme liberation and service of the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world. So what is Sandhya Vandana? So it's a lot of different things seen from different levels. So superficially, the superficial meaning would be the worship of a goddess named Sandhya, who is a minor deity, goddess of the twilights. Some hold that this refers to the worship of the sun at daybreak, the meeting point of noon of the day and the night, right? The night and the day. And again, at sunset, the meeting point, another Sandhya of the day and night. So the Sandhyas there are actually 4 Sandhyas. There's the twilights, the morning twilight, the evening twilight, dawn and dusk. Then there's noon and there's midnight. So midnight normally, unless there's some tantric people, some agamics and tantrics, they perform some sort of Sandhyas at midnight. But normally it's these 3 Sandhyas, the dawn, noon, and dusk. These are the times when we should perform Sandhya Vandanam. So again, in another sense, Sandhyopasana, the Upasana means worship of Sandhya, at Sandhya, or of Sandhya, could connote the Jivatman and the Paramatman combined, Sandhya. So just like we say yoga, there's Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, is a way to come in contact again with God, to establish our relationship with God. So here, Sandhya means is to come together, not in the sense of merging with God, but in the sense of coming together so that we can properly serve him because we're his servants. The jiva, the individual soul, or the jivatman, consisting, as it were, the body of the Paramatma. Now, according to Ramanuja's philosophy, the universe and the souls, the individual souls, constitute as a whole the body of God, because everything is the body of God. Everything, he pervades everything from outside and also inside. So this, the body of the Paramatma means the supreme soul, the supreme Lord, Sriman Narayana. The super soul, we can call it super soul, right? Residing inside the former in the heart region. Sometimes it's said to be in the heart region because the Paramatma is in the heart region. This is described in the Rig Veda Purusha Sukta in the very first verse. Sahasra Shirusha Purushaha, Sahasra Aksha, Sahasrapad, Sabhumin, Vishpato Vitpa, Atyatishta Dasangulam. Dasangulam is a measurement. An angula is the breadth of a finger. Dasangulas are, there's 4, there's another 4, that's 8, and another 2 on top of that is the span of the hand. That is the size of the Paramatma within the heart of a human being. So the Paramatma in the heart of any living being never gets bigger than, according to the Veda, is never bigger than Dasangulam, the span of the hand, human hand. So in all its brilliance, the perpetual day, the sun that never sets to rise again. Okay, so we can consider also that the Paramatma is like the sun also within the body. So it could be safely asserted that the rishis, or the seers, the saints of yore, of all ancient times, who were steeped in dhyana yoga, the process of meditation, for hundreds of years at a stretch, must have been engaged only in the blissful Sandhya Upasana, the worship of Sandhya, referred to in C above. So the not the superficial worship of a minor goddess, nor of superficial worship at different parts of the day, but in this type of yoga or meditation. In fact, it's a Vedic, it's a Vedic Vidya, the Gayatri Vidya. Gayatri Vidya is one of the 32 Upanishadic methods of reaching the supreme or reaching moksha or liberation. So referred to in C above, neither A or B could hold good as the case of the aspirants for moksha, the mumukshus. A person who wants liberation is called a mumukshu, he desires liberation. Seeking emancipation from the material shackles and mundane moorings, who shall not worship any but the supreme Brahman, Lord Sriman Narayana, also known as Vishnu or Vasudeva. He's called Vasudeva when he pervades everything from outside, and Vishnu when he pervades everything from inside. Whose sole prerogative is to grant moksha, he is the only one who can grant liberation to the bound souls in this world, the jivatmas. Looking at the vociferous declaration of the Vedas and Upanishadic texts that the sun, wind, time, etc., are all subject to the absolute control of the Supreme Lord. Propitiation of the sun at Sandhya time, right, at these junctions of the day and night, right? The point of time at which the night departs the day, right, in other words, dawn, and the day sets in, and vice versa, would not be relevant. The sun, the wind, etc., function in the manner each one does with a due sense of discipline and fear of the Supreme Lord, the sole ordainer of the universe and its functioning. So it says here, Vishasmat Vataha Havate Bisho Deti Suryaha. Actually, all the mantras contained in Sandhya Vandanam denote only the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is the Gayatri mantra in the Sandhya Vandana is, of course, a solar, it addresses the Supreme Lord as Surya Narayana within the sun disk. But it's much more than that. So, as made out by the learned commentators, and the most outstanding being Sriman Narayana Yatindra, a jir or a sannyasi, right? The second in the pontifical lineage of the Ahobala Mutt. So the Ahobala Mutt is the Sri Vaishnava Mutt, and the head of the first head of the Ahobala Mutt is the Parakala. The Adivan Sadakopan, Yatindra Mahadeshikan, right? Who was a brahmachari who got a dream from Lord Narasimha to come to Ahobalam, the place of the avatar of Lord Narasimha, and Lord Narasimha then appeared to him there in different forms and gave him sannyas like that. So, and then he started his own mutt on the order of the Lord. So the second, his successor, Sriman Narayana Yatindra, the second in the pontifical lineage of the Ahobalam Mutt, that doyen Sudarshana Bhatta is also called Sudarshana Suri. Sudarshana Suri is the great commentator who wrote Shruta Prakashika. So he's called Shruta Prakashika Acharya. Shruta Prakashika is a commentary on Ramanuja's Shribhashya, which is Ramanuja's commentary on the Vedanta Sutras. Which also, all of this explains the Upanishads and the Brahma Vidyas. And again, one of the Brahma Vidyas, one of the 32 methods given in the Upanishads for attaining the Lord, or for realizing the Lord, or for attaining perfection and liberation, is this Gayatri Vidya, right? So the worship of the Lord through the Gayatri Mantra, who has bequeathed an illuminating commentary in Sanskrit, Tirumalai Andan Pillai and Kunnatur Ayan Swami, right? Vidyaranya and Vaidyanatha Dikshita have also written commentaries in the light of Advaita. So he's given like 4 people here who have written commentaries in Sanskrit about Sandhya Vandanam, right? For the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. And he's also mentioned Vaidyanath Dikshita, who is very famous in South India for writing a series of books all about Dharma and all the details of Dharma. These are the Vanashram, the details of Karma Kanda, the details of so many of Anikam, of daily practice, the details of all different things. And that is called Shmiti Muktapalam. So Shmiti Muktapalam by Vaidyanath Dikshita, and Vidyaranya, who was a famous sannyasi, who was an Advaitin, a follower of Adi Shankaracharya. He was one of the court he resided in Hampi, which is the traditional capital of the Vijayanagara Empire. King Krishnadeva was the king who installed him as one of his court pundits. He wanted to have a Madhva, a Sri Vaishnava, and a Madhva, Sri Vaishnava, and a follower of Shankar and Advaitin. He wanted all three to be court pundits. So he had Vidyaranya as his Advaitin. And later on, Vidyaranya wrote a letter to Vedanta Deshika in Sri Rangam, and he invited Vedanta Deshika, who was a very poor grihasta, but a brilliant scholar for Sri Vaishnavas, to come to the court of the king in Hampi and live a very comfortable life, being patronized by the king. But Vedanta Deshika refused to come, and he wrote 5 verses, I believe, Vairagya Panchagam, and told him about his life of Vairagya and how he considered that to be more opulence, serving the Lord of Sri Rangam in Sri Rangam than coming to the court of the king. So very similar to the story of how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and King Pradipurudra had pastimes in Puri and Orissa. That Chaitanya, as a sannyasi, didn't want to get too close to a materialistic person like the king, even though he was a great devotee. So King Krishnadeva is also a very great devotee, or Vaishnava, but Vedanta Deshika, even though he wasn't a sannyasi, he didn't want to be under the control or patronage of the king, or he didn't want to take any handouts from the king or be supported in some way by the king. He was happy in Sri Rangam serving Lord Ranganathan. So it was to be emphasized over again that in terms of obeying the Lord's command with service, Kainkarya, right, the Sandhya Vandana has to be performed thrice a day, 3 times a day, at the appropriate timings and cannot be given up. The appropriate timings are just before sunrise, when the sun is at the meridian or noon, local noon, which denotes the meeting points of the forenoon and the afternoon. And at sunset, when the sun sinks into the horizon and goes out of sight, so dusk. The chanting of the Vedic mantras is prohibited on certain specific days of each fortnight. What's actually forbidden on the Parva days is learning new Vedic mantras. So the teaching and learning of Vedic mantras is forbidden on certain days of the month, but lunar days. But the repetition of the Vedas that you already know, in order to keep them in mind or to learn them by heart, is not forbidden. But we can't learn anything new. So of each fortnight, and when under pollution due to the demise of a blood relation or the birth of a child or the death of a person, right, in the family. So there are 10 days called Titu in Tamil, or Asocha in Sanskrit, contamination in English, where the person is contaminated if somebody else in his family, some Brahmins take it as far as the Gotra. If somebody else in their Gotra, as their extended family, has either been born or dies, then they observe 10 days, especially if it's a close family, 10 days pollution. So, and there are different numbers of days for different classes of people in the Varnashram system. This is the Nitya Karma. Although the latter has several Vedic mantras incorporated in it, without exception, it has to be done even during those days, the Sandhya Vandana, even though it has some Vedic mantras in it. So this is a Nitya Karma, daily duty enjoined by Brahman, by the Supreme Lord, on Trivarnikas, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. At this stage, the reader might, however, point out why the mandate of performing the Sandhya Vandana throughout one's life is given the go by the Advaita sannyasins who remove their tuft, their shika, right? The tuft of hair which has to be there for the Brahmin to be able to perform the sacrifice, and sutra, yagya pavitam, which also has to be there in order to, it's called yagya upavita. It is the sutra, the sacrifice string, the sacrificial string, has to be there for performing the sacrifices. So why, one might wonder why also the sannyasis, the Advaita sannyasis or the Mayavadi sannyasis would get rid of these things, the Sika and the Sutra. They shave their head completely and they leave off the Brahman thread, the sacred thread. So why on their taking of the holy orders in taking sannyas? It's indeed a strange phenomenon. In fact, in Vaishnava sannyasi, the sannyasis don't leave the Sika and they don't leave the Sutra. They continue to wear those things, have those things. Although even Vaishnava sannyasis are not supposed to perform fire rituals because of the prohibition given in the scriptures. In Bhagavad Gita says, sannyasi to yogi chana niragnina chakya. Niragniya means no, you touch it. If you're a yogi or sannyasi, you touch no fire and perform no work. Right? You don't have a job and you don't mix in society like that, and you simply concentrate on the Lord, and you also don't touch any fire. So sannyasis are not supposed to cook for themselves or anything like that. Okay, so it's indeed a strange phenomenon. The Advaitins do chant the Vedas and impart them to their disciples. So although Advaitins or Mayavadis or people who are impersonalists or monists, right, they do teach the Vedas and they do teach people the Upanishads and the Vedas. They have their own understanding of them, their own half-truth understanding of the Vedas, which is not applicable for Vaishnavas. Still, they also go through the ceremonial bath and perform Sandhya Vandanam, Yagya, etc. Before you perform Sandhya Vandanam, you're supposed to take a bath and become clean, ceremonial bath, a ritualistic bath. In the light of their varna or caste, their particular class in society, and their ashrama, their station in life, their different stage of life, and scriptural dictates. And yet, when they take to sannyasa, they give up the tuft, the Sika, or it's called a kudumi, right? Or in some places in Hindi, it's called choti, right? And the sacred thread, otherwise known as punal in Tamil, or yagyopavita in Sanskrit, or simply upavita or janayu in Hindi. Some different words for it. And with that, the performance of Sandhya Vandana as well, proclaiming their monistic identity with Brahman. So when as reflected by the ekadanda, the single staff or stick that they carry about with them. So the Advaita, the Mayavadi sannyasis, the Advaitin sannyasis, the impersonal sannyasis, consider themselves to have become realized and to therefore to become equal to the Supreme Brahman, Sriman Narayana, to become equal to God through that realization. The why and therefore they don't bother to do Sandhya Vandanam anymore. The why and the wherefore of these marked deviations by the Advaitins and the reasoned repudiation thereof will be found in the Shrivashya by Saint Ramanuja's commentary on the Brahma Sutras or Vedanta Sutras, in the Lagu Purva Paksha and the Lagu Siddhanta, respectively. So Lagu means small. Purva Paksha is the initial argument, proposition, and the Siddhanta is the conclusion. So normally we see arguments put forward, and then the person who's writing the book, who's writing the commentary, will take the arguments of the opponents and as the Purva Paksha, as the first part of the argument, the proposition, and he will give the conclusion which destroys the Purva Paksha and show the real ultimate Siddhanta, or the actual understanding, the proper understanding. So this will not be dilated further here. So we don't need to talk any more about the Advaitins and what they don't do, that they don't do Sandhya Vandana, because the Vaishnava sannyasis still do Sandhya Vandana, right? And all the other Trivarnikas, all the other three higher classes, they all do the Vedic Sandhya Vandana. And therefore, we don't need to talk about it anymore, because again, in Srivasya, Ramanuja has completely destroyed this argument why they've given it up. They should not have given it up. It's the most important Vedic karma, or Vedic action. However, the Sri Vaishnava sannyasis do not give up the Tap Yagya Pavita and Sandhya Vandana performance. And now about the prapanas. Prapanas means refugees, the persons who have taken refuge by taking shelter and surrendering at the Lord's feet, who look upon God as their sole refuge and do not resort to any means other than his sweet spontaneous grace for their redemption and attainment of his lotus feet in the yonder heaven, Sri Vaikuntham, their ultimate goal. It is incumbent on them also to perform the nitya, the daily, and the naimittika, occasional rites, as long as they live, with this fundamental difference, right? So the fundamental difference of the prapanas, the people who are surrendered to the Lord, that while in their pre-surrender period, they did all of these as a means for their spiritual evolution and attainment. After they surrender, in their post-surrender period, they perform these rites as a mere service or kainkarya, an obedience to the Lord's dictates or orders in the shape of the shastric or scriptural decrees or injunctions. Agya kainkarya. Agya means his order, the Supreme Lord's order. Kainkarya means service. So serving his order, just serving his order. That's the only reason we do it. So the performance of Sandhya Vandana is a must. If we perform Sandhya Vandana, it's an interesting thing. It's a ritual that usually we think of doing a ritual and getting some benefit from it. There's actually no benefit for performing Sandhya Vandana. The only benefit is that we remain pure. We remain pure. But if we don't perform Sandhya Vandana, then we become asuchir. We become unqualified. We become impure. And we cannot perform any other Vedic ritual. So we have to do it because we have to perform other karmas we have to chant other Vedic mantras. We have to perform things for other people. So in the final in the Charama Sloka, which means the final order of Lord Krishna, or Bhagavan Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, propounding the doctrine of surrender, that is in chapter 18, verse 66, Sarva dharmam parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja, aham tva sarva papebhyo moksha yishyami ma suchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I'll protect you from all fear, from everything that you fear. Fear not. I'll protect you from, and you will go to moksha. I will make sure you go to liberation. Fear not. Simply put all your trust in me. Surrender to me. So in the Charama Sloka of Bhagavan Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, propounding the doctrine of surrender to his loving grace, looking upon him as the sole refuge, the Lord did not counsel giving up all the erstwhile duties as such. So there's a misinterpretation. Some people, they look at sarvadhamam prityaja. The word tyaj, parityaj, pari is an upasarga, or is the preposition that goes with tyaj. So the word in the verb in the first line is prityaja. It means abandon or give up, right? So some people say, well, sarva dharmam, all religion or all religious rites or all rituals, give them up, right? But it doesn't actually mean to give up the actual performance of rituals. It means that you have to give up the mentality that you are performing the rituals, the mentality that you want the result of the rituals. It is not the ritual itself which is given up, but it is the fruit of the ritual which is given up back to the Supreme Lord. Because the Supreme Lord is really the one who is the only doer. So people mistakenly think that Krishna says give up all religions, right? Give up all religious activities, give up all rituals, like that. That's not true. Maybe some Advaitins or impersonalists following Shankaracharya, they might say Krishna is saying give up all actions, all rituals, and just take to Jnana Yoga, pure knowledge of the scriptures, and it's by pure knowledge that you'll attain liberation. No, that's not what sarvadhamam prityaja means. Okay, so here he says, and remaining. So do not give up all the erstwhile duties as such, and remain idle, but emphasize the need for the performance as a matter of religious duty in the spirit of service to him, and not as a means of attaining him. Earlier too, the Lord had emphasized the need for doing all that one does in the spirit of total dedication, attributing everything to him as the sole ordainer, with the stress on the service, bhagavadagyaya kainkarya. So the order of the Lord and for his service. The aspect of this aspect of performance of the rites, it would logically follow that Sandhya Vandana, as one such inviolable, and we have to perform it, must be performed, a must perform ritual, right, could be skipped only when one is engaged in the direct service of the Lord in his iconic or archa deity form manifestation as an icon in the temple, which assumes overriding importance and not under any other circumstances. And there's actually a story like this about Parashara Bhatta, who was one of the twin sons of Kurital, one of Kuresha, who was the main disciple of Ramanuja. One day, Parashara Bhatta was fanning the Lord in Sri Rangam, Namperumal, with a chamari, and he was told by his other Brahmin friends, look, the sun is setting, it's time to go and do the Sandhya Vandanam. And he said, okay, I'm doing service to the Lord. Like that, this is more important than going and doing Sandhya Vandanam. So this is the only reason why a Bhagavata or a lover or a devotee or a bhakti, a person who's following bhakti, or a prapana, a refugee, somebody who's taking shelter of the Lord and surrendered to the Lord, will leave the Sandhya Vandana ritual undone. So here we say the form and content of the Sandhya Vandana vary according to the particular Veda Shaka, or the different branch of the Rig, Yajur, and Sama Vedas, or even of the Atharva Veda, let's say, to which one traditionally belongs. Even so the families of the Trivarnikas, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, they belong to different branches of the Vedas. And so the Sandhya Vandana details will differ according to that. So there'll be Rig Veda Sandhya Vandana, Yajur Veda Sandhya Vandana, Krishna Yajur Veda Sandhya Vandana, Shukla Yajur Veda Sandhya Vandana. There'll be Samaveda Sandhya Vandana, Rig Veda Sandhya Vandana, and they'll be slightly different, right? Using slightly different mantras from those different Vedas. Even so, there is some difference in mantras chanted by Vaishnavas and Smartas. So still, there might also be some difference between people who are Krishna Yajurvedis, who are Vaishnavas, and Krishna Yajurvedis who are Smartas. Smartas means Advaitins, again, impersonal followers of the impersonal philosophy of Adi Shankaracharya. So again, there might even be some very slight differences in the sankalpa in some of the ritual between different sampradayas also, between Madhva, Gaudiya, Sri Vaishnava, Nimbarka, Balaba, like this. But everybody is doing Sandhya Vandana. So who are eligible to, again, amongst those who are born in the three Varnas, namely Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, who are eligible to recite the Vedas and to perform Sandhya Vandana, the mantras and procedures vary slightly. It is also imperative that the chanters of the Vedas and the mantras in the Sandhya Vandanam should know the meanings thereof. It's imperative. In the Chandogya Upanishad, there's a place where one sage, he goes to a sacrifice and he asks the people, the priests at sacrifice, do you know what you're chanting? Do you know the Sanskrit? Do you know the meaning? Do you understand the inner meaning? So mantra has power. The prayers of the Vedas and the prayers in Sanskrit, the mantras have power, but they have much greater power if we understand what they mean. If we know, and of course there are superficial meanings and there are deeper meanings and there are very esoteric secret meanings. So we should try to, as far as possible, learn all the meanings and understand the mantras that we chant. Failure to do so would not only render the chantings ineffective, but also reduce them to the ridiculous position of the donkey, carrying on its back loads of sandalwood bags and bundles of saffron, which is incapable of enjoying the fragrance emanating therefrom. So he's the example given here in the scriptures is if you chant a mantra but you don't know what it means, you're just like a donkey who's carrying sandalwood and saffron, but you have your nose is blocked that you can't smell. You can't take advantage of smelling those things. So you're practicing those mantras, but you can't really understand them and therefore can't really benefit from them. So therefore, further, it's important, right? Further is the ignorance of the purport of these mantras and imperative necessity of chanting them, which has led to the present impasse. As a good many having given up the performance of Sandhya Vandana altogether, because people, so what happens is that people end up doing the ritual without knowing what it's for, and ultimately they give it up because they don't know what it's for. But if they knew the meaning, they would take to it and they would do it again. Particularly in the present age of reasoning, when the robust implicit faith of yesteryears has lost its hold on the people, they would want to know the why and wherefore of the traditional observance. So that's why this little book is going to tell us deeply what it means, what the Sandhya Vandana means, unless it is brought home to them in the manner now sought to be done in this book. They will have no hesitation in dismissing it all as a mere superstition and not worthy of serious attention. It is therefore absolutely essential for the chanters to know the purport of the relevant mantras so as to infuse in them the requisite sense of devotion and stern mental application. The first of the Alwars in chronological order, in his Mudal Tiruvandadi, that is Pogai Alwar, Pogai, Buddha, and Pei Alwar, the first three Alwars, they're all called Mudal Alwars, which means in Tamil, the first Alwars. They were born traditionally in the last weeks of the previous Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, just before Kali Yuga. So he has written a statement, Pogai Alwar has written a statement in his Mudal Tiruvandadi, which is his Tamil Prabandha or poem in praise of the Lord. Verse number 33 or stanza 33, has just ridiculed those who perform Sandhya Vandanam without due concentration of the mind and get distracted by surroundings. In between mechanical mumblings, a routine exercise completely devoid or shorn of devotion. The desired concentration could be ensured only if the chanters know what they chant, why they do it, apart from the basic sense of devotion to the religious duty enjoined on them, a fundamental requisite.
It just goes to show that the persons may claim to have been coming to maybe even Vaishnavism or practicing some sort of smarta ritual, that they are still Brahmanas, but as you rightly noted, they are Brahman bandhus. They are the fallen friend of Brahmanas. Because he
looks like a Brahmin, he talks like a Brahmin, he acts like a Brahmin, but if he doesn't do Sandhya Vandana and understand why he does Sandhya Vandana, he cannot call himself a Brahmin or even a Trivarnika, Kshatriya or Vaishya. So the idea is that people are only Brahmin or Kshatriya or Vaishya in name only. They're only high class in name only. So if somebody says that they're high class, why are they high class? Because they understand and they perform. They have the knowledge and they have the actions, right? Of a Brahmana, right? Like that. Not just that he has a string on his shoulder, or he may look like a Brahmin, you know. That doesn't mean you're a Brahmin. That doesn't mean that you're a Trivarnika. That doesn't mean you're an intellectual or a high class person or a deep thinker. Or you understand the purpose of the Vedic ritual. There's no point in doing rituals if you don't understand it. And this is the basic one, and you have to understand it, and you have to do it. And therefore, it gives you the qualification to do others.
In these, I think the Vishnu Dharma Shastra, that stated that if you don't follow the writ of the Lord, written word, the scriptural injunction, you get the displeasure of the Lord, the wrath of the Lord, of Vishnu, of Sriman Narayana.
Well, the thing is, the Lord why does a master give orders? He wants us to follow those orders. He's our master. He wants us to follow those orders. If we don't follow his orders, he's not going to reject us, but still at the same time, what can he do? We have some minute independence. We have some minute freedom. We think that we can do something else or different. So we may stay here in this material world. That's what this material world is here for us to try and not follow his orders. So, for those persons who want moksha, especially those persons who want to, once you come to the realization that you don't want to stay in this material world and continue in a cycle of birth, death, and old age and disease, then you have to apply yourself a little bit. But only if you want to perform Vedic rituals. Only if you want to perform Vedic rituals, if you want to be qualified to perform Vedic rituals and to perform Vedic rituals, chant the mantras of the Vedas. You don't have to know the Vedas or practice the Vedas or Vedic rites to be surrendered to God. Anybody can surrender to God even without knowing one word of the Vedas. Okay? You can do that. Gajendra was an elephant and he attained liberation. Vibhishana was a Rakshasa, was a demon, and he attained by surrendering to the Lord. Even Draupadi was a woman. She didn't know the Vedas, but she surrendered to the Lord. She also attained. So all of these people, there's many more examples to do. Jatayu was a vulture, was an eagle, whatever. So there's so many examples of that who surrendered to the Lord, without having knowledge of the Vedas and everything like that. However, if you want to study the Vedas, and if you want to practice teaching the Vedas, studying the Vedas, and doing any Vedic rites, which include chanting of Vedic mantras, which includes special pronunciation, which you have to remember and not get incorrect, right? If you want to do those things, then it behooves you, or it's important for you to perform Sandhya Vandana 3 times a day and to know what it means.
Om Namo